13th day of the 4th month of 56 AC was cold and grey. Jaehaerys Targaryen had breakfast with an envoy of the Iron Banker Braavos, who had come to collect the annual payments on the crown's loan. Alyssa Farman was still very much on the king's mind, and he had information that her ship had been built in Braavos. The king demanded to know if the Iron Bank had financed the ship, and if they had any knowledge of the stolen dragon eggs. The banker denied all. Elsewhere in the Red Keep, Queen Alsyanna spent the morning with her children. Princess Daenerys had finally warned her brother, Aemon, though she still wanted a little sister. Septon Barth was in the library, Grand Maester Benifer in his rookery, and across the city, Lord Corbray was inspecting the men of the East Barracks of the City Watch, whilst Rigo Draz entertained a young lady of questionable virtue in his house below the Dragon Pit. All of them remembered what they were doing when they heard the blast of a horn ringing through the morning air. Queen Alsyanna described it as a sound that ran down her spine like a cold knife. In a lonely watchtower overlooking the waters of Blackwater Bay, a guard had glimpsed dark wings in the distance and sounded the alarm. He sounded the horn again as the wings grew larger, and a third time when he saw the dragon plain, black against the clouds. Balerion had returned to King's Landing. It had been a long time since the Black Dread had last been seen in the skies above the capital, not since the days of Maegor the Cruel, whom many feared had returned from beyond the grave to mount the dragon once again. But the rider clinging to his neck was not a dead king, but a dying child. Balerion's shadow swept across the yard and the halls of the Red Keep as he came down, his huge wings buffeting the air to land in the inner ward near Maegor's holdfast. Before he'd even touched the ground, Princess Aerea slid from his back. Even those who had known her best during her years at court could not recognize her. She was near enough naked, her clothing no more than rags clinging to her body. Her hair was tangled and matted, her limbs as thin as sticks. She shouted for help to the knights and squires who had seen her descent. They all came rushing towards her. She tried to speak again, but collapsed. Sir Lucamore Strong, shoving aside the onlookers as he took the princess in his arms and carried her across the castle to Grand Maester Benifer. Later, he would tell anyone who would listen that the girl was flushed and burning with a fever, her skin so hot he could feel it even through his armour. She had blood in her eyes, the knight claimed, and there was something inside her, something moving that made her shudder and twist. He did not tell these tales for long. The next day, King Jaehares sent for him and commanded him never to speak of the incident again. The king and queen were sent for at once, but when they reached the maester's chambers, Benifer denied them entry. He told them they did not want to see her like this, and he would be remiss if he allowed anyone any closer. Guards were posted at the door. Only Septon Barth was admitted to administer the rites of the dying. Benifer did what he could for the princess, gave her milk with the poppy, and immersed her in a tub of ice to bring the fever down, but his efforts were to no avail. While hundreds crowded into the Red Keep Sept to pray for her, Jaehaerys and Alsyanna kept a vigil outside the maester's door. The sun had set, and it was the hour of the bat, when Barth emerged to announce that Aerea Targaryen was dead. The princess was consigned to the flames the next day at sunrise, her body wrapped in fine white linen from head to toe. Grand Maester Benifer, who prepared her for the funeral pyre, looked half dead himself. The king announced that his niece had died of a fever and asked the realm to pray for her. King's Landing mourned for a few days before life resumed as before, and that was the end of it. But mysteries remained, however. More than 40 men have served the Iron Throne as Grand Maester. Their journals, letters, account books, memoirs and court calendars are the single best record of the events they witnessed, while not all of them were equally diligent. Some volumes were full of empty words, never failing to note what the king ate for dinner. Others set down no more than half a dozen paragraphs a year. In this regard, Grand Maester Benifer ranked near the top, and his letters and journals provide detailed account of all he saw and witnessed while he served King Jaehaerys and his uncle Maegor before him. And yet, in all of Benifer's writing, there was not a single word to be found concerning the return of Aerea Targaryen and her stolen dragon to King's Landing, nor the death of the young princess. However, this was not the case with Septon Barth, and it's because of Barth the horrific truth is known. The following is what Septon Barth wrote. It has been 3 days since the princess died, and I have not slept. I do not know if I will ever sleep again. The Seven are merciful, but there was no mercy in what befell the princess. How could the gods be so uncaring as to permit such horror? I do not want to know. If this makes me a faithless Septon, then so be it. Grand Maester Benifer and I have agreed to tell no one of what we saw in his chambers as the poor child lay dying. Not the king, or the queen, nor Rhaena, not even the citadel. But the memories won't leave me. I shall set them down here. Maybe by the time they are found and read, men will have gained a better understanding of such evil. We have told the world Princess Aerea died of a fever, which is broadly true, but it was a fever and hope never to see again. The girl was burning. Her skin was flushed and red, and when I touched her brow, It was like thrusting it into a boiling oil. There was not an ounce of flesh on her. We could observe certain swellings inside of her, as her skin bulged out and then shrunk back down again. Well, this was the truth of it. There were things living inside of her. Living things, moving and twisting, maybe searching for a way out, giving her such pain that even milk with the poppy gave no relief. We told the king, and we must surely tell her mother, that Aerea never spoke. That is a lie. I shall pray that I shall soon forget some of the things whispered through her cracked and bleeding lips. I cannot forget how often she begged for death. All the maester's arts were powerless. The simplest way to say is that the poor girl was cooking from within. Her flesh grew darker and darker, and then began to crack until her skin resembled something like pork cracklings. Thin tendrils of smoke poured from her mouth, her nose, from everywhere, but by then she had stopped speaking, though the things inside her continued to move. Her very eyes cooked inside her skull and finally burst. I thought that was the most hideous thing that I should ever see, but I was quickly proven wrong. Benifer and I lowered the poor child into a tub and covered her with ice. The shock of the immersion stopped her heart at once. I told myself, if so, that it was a mercy, for that was when things inside her came out. The things, I do not know how to speak of them. They were worms with faces, snakes with hands, twisting, slimy, unspeakable things that seemed to writhe and pulse and squirm as they came bursting from her flesh. Some were no bigger than my little finger, but one at least was as long as my arm. The sounds they made haunt my dreams. They died though, I must remember that. Cling to that. Whatever they were creatures of heat and fire, and they did not love the ice. One after another, they thrashed and withered and died before my eyes. I will not presume to give them names, as they were horrors. All that can be said is Princess Aerea Targaryen, daughter of Aegon the Uncrowned and Rhaena Targaryen, aged only 14 years old, most likely died the worst death anyone in the Seven Kingdoms would surely ever have.